All right, we welcome in, you hear him every Thursday. Now he's going to join us every Tuesday and Thursday at 5:05. Our good friend Jovan Alford at Jovan10, staff writer DK Live. Don't forget TotalSportsLive.com. Kind enough to join us for a couple moments on this Tuesday. Jovan, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to touch base with you. All right, let's get right down into this. I feel bad because I was just so nasty and critical when it came to Nick Sirianni, and now all of a sudden I got to eat a little crow, Jovan, because now he's coming up smelling like roses. So what do you attribute this turnaround by this head coach and, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles that led them into this predicament right now, which is the playoffs on the road against Tampa Bay? What do you attribute the success to?
Hey, I mean, they must have been listening to the show when we were talking about the whole Flowers situation a few months ago and making fun of it. That might have been the key, but no, I mean, I think for the Eagles, I think they found their identity, right? More specifically on offense, and that was the big thing, right, that we were talking about early in the season. The team didn't have an identity. It was trying to force throwing the ball 30, 35 times, which you just can't win in the NFL like that. You can, but it's not a winning situation for every team. And this team found its bread and butter with their offensive line and saying, yo, we got like 3-4 running backs who can run the football and can be really dominant with an offensive line that's one of the best in the league. And they're taking advantage of that, using the skill of their quarterback, who can also use his legs as a +1 in the run game, and which then has now opened up things in the passing game with Dallas Goedert becoming more effective, with Devontae Smith, showing up. So it's been just them finding that identity on offense, and even defensively. Defensively, they've gotten a little bit better. You don't like to see, Jonathan Gannon playing 10 to 15 yards, telling the defense play 10 to 15 yards off the line of scrimmage a lot of times, but the defense is causing turnovers. The defensive line is getting pressure. The addition of having Fletcher Cox instead of playing inside, sometimes playing on the edge, has helped. So I think all those things have helped them turn this thing around and get them into the playoffs.
Yeah, listen, to me, I look at this game where it's okay if you open it up a little bit after you've kind of established what you need to establish, and as both you and I both mentioned, running the football. But this can be a game where you might get a fake punt, you might get a fake field goal, you might see a little trickery, because the one thing that worries me a little bit, Tampa Bay is down a couple weapons. We know that. Still got Brady back there, man. And as long as he's slinging it, I mean, that can just give you an absolute headache. They're going to have to pressure him. And my only concern is then you start to leave some of these DBs in that secondary, those players on an island. And that's basically where Brady has an opportunity to kind of chew you apart. So field position, time of possession, and I think it's critical for the Philadelphia Eagles. You get down in that red zone, you got to punch it in. You can't settle for 3.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with you. Like you said, they're going to have to get creative in their play calling, but like you said, after they establish the run game. I know we've seen the last few weeks, Darius Slay has popped in a few times on offense. We haven't seen him catch a pass yet. Maybe that happens this week. We saw the addition, last week with the shovel passes to tight end, another wrinkle to the offense. So we'll see what other wrinkles they have here. And like you said, they got to get pressure. If you, like you said, it doesn't matter who Brady has out there. He still has Mike Evans. He still has Ron Gronkowski. Cyril Grayson has stepped up big time for him, but he's going with a hamstring injury. It doesn't matter who you have out there. If you give him time, he's going to find it. And you just hope, that the Eagles, when they're on defense, like you said, that they can generate pressure, that they send a linebacker on a blitz to try to get his feet moving, and you live with the repercussions of, whoever's defending Gronkowski. You got to think Darius Slay is going to take on Mike Evans. You'll hopefully follow him. And hopefully Steven Nelson does his job on the outside, because I think Avonte Maddox can handle his job inside at the nickel position.
2 things. Do you think they cover the Eagles first and foremost? And then Seth Joyner had some interesting comments after the Dallas game, post-game, that I tweeted out, where he basically said, look, you kind of limp your you-know-what into the playoffs. You're going to limp your you-know-what out. I guess he wasn't too happy with them giving up 51. Granted, you didn't have your starters out there. He was talking about momentum. So, do you buy into that momentum is always the key going into the playoffs at the right time and being hot? And then do you think the Eagles cover this number, which I believe will sit still right around 8.5?
I'm going to disagree with Seth's comment there, just because even if they did play the starters, right, most of the starters were on the COVID reserve list.
Yep.
So you were still walking a situation where you You didn't have like three of your starting running backs, missing players on offensive line, defensive play. You know, you're listening to a ton of defensive pieces, so it would have been a wash. You know, play him. I get him when he said, you know, about having momentum in the playoffs. And granted, you know, some teams do need that momentum, but at the same time, you risk the injury over, you know, resting guys. And you got to think for the Eagles, for a lot of teams specifically that was fighting for those wild card spots in both conferences, every week was a playoff game, right? Every week was a playoff game, must-win situation where you had to bring your A game. So I'm not particularly worried about that. You know, like you said, they were going against a whole bunch of, you know, they were running out backups and start backup players to get some snaps in just to make it out healthy. No major players got hurt, so that's good. You just got to hope, again, that they take what they've learned these last, you know, 5-6 games where they've really been, you know, playing in playoff-like type, you know, situations, and that they go down and execute. And when it comes to the spread, earlier in the week I didn't think so, but now I'm thinking about the game a little bit more and definitely seeing that they get, you know, Jordan Howard back, seeing they got the other players back. Miles Sanders, who knows how big a role he's going to play because he still has the fractured hand. I think they can cover this. Like you said, they might not. They probably won't win this game, but if they can run the ball, which has been their bread and butter and which has kind of plagued this Tampa Bay defense as of late, then they can keep it close to make this game a little bit sweaty in that mid-fourth quarter range.
Do you see any early player props that you like?
Not yet. That's exactly what I've been waiting for. I've been definitely waiting for to see.
Probably coming up on Wednesday, you think?
Probably. You got to think where we're at Tuesday, so probably tomorrow you got to think that those are, you know, creeping out. Because I didn't see nobody ever yet. We haven't heard of any other players getting on a COVID reserve list, so got to think Wednesday probably be our shot where player props start to slowly leak out.
Any other game? Well, I'm sure there's a couple, but that you like that you're leaning towards one direction or the other on Saturday and Sunday and Monday, I should say.
I'm weirdly leaning toward taking the Raiders spread against the Bengals. I'm leaning toward that way, and I don't know why. And I know these two teams did play early in the season, and the Bengals straight up smoked the Raiders. But we've seen this Raiders team play really good, you know, down the stretch. We've seen this Bengals team struggle to stop the run. Same thing with the Raiders. Both teams do not stop the run very well. So you got to think this should be a good game for both running backs. But, you know, defensively, I think that Raiders, you know, for what they lack in the secondary, specifically at cornerback, they make it up with the defensive line. And we know how much of an issue that Bengals' offensive line has been this season. I think the Raiders can generate some pressure on Joe Burrow. So I'm leaning towards that, and the Raiders have been really good against the spread at underdogs this season. I think they're like 7-4 against the spread or something along those lines. So they played really good against the spread as underdogs this season, and as road dogs, they're 4-2 against the spread. So right now, I'm leaning towards, you know, Raiders plus the 5 against the Bengals.
Yeah, and I never subscribe into, well, they haven't been there in 20 years. Well, you're talking about guys that are 20, 21 years old. I mean,
right?
You know,
exactly.
That's why, I don't really go too nuts on that. And I look, to me, and you're dead on with protecting Burrow. He's been sacked 51 times this year. So, and the Raiders got some players, man. They can get to the quarterback. We saw a little bit of that the other night. But, you know, I think Carr's going to be the X factor. Just like when I look at that Rams and I look at that Cardinals game, to me, I think Stafford's going to be the quarterback under the most microscope, going into these playoffs. Because I think everyone's waiting to see if he has a 30 for 35, 325, 3-touchdown performance and they win, or if he goes 18 of 39 for $178 and 2 picks, they're going to say, well, this is the same guy, right? This is the same guy in Detroit. So to me, that's a fascinating game as well, but I'm kind of leaning towards the Rams.
Yeah, no, that definitely is a fascinating game, you know, from the Matthew Stafford side and also the Cliff Kingsbury side, right?
Yes.
Cliff Kingsbury these last 2 seasons and this team somehow have had a weird, you know, second half swoon to where it's like, what happened to the team that played in the first half of the season? Obviously, they lost DeAndre Hopkins, but still, this offense has kind of been sputtering heavily. Kyler Murray hasn't really played his best football, so it's really going to see, you know, which is almost like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation, right? Where is that going to show up for the Cardinals? Where is that going to show up for the Rams? Because we see the Rams, right? The Rams, when they're on, they're good. And, you know, the whole stat about when Sean McVay's up at halftime, they usually win. That didn't happen last week. But They know what time it is in situation. This is why they made the move that they made, and you hopefully think that it could pay off. And I think, the pressure's on both teams to succeed, but you got to think the Rams have the slight edge here, knowing that they just beat this Cardinals team at Arizona a few weeks ago on Monday night.
Thursday, we'll dive into these games a little more. Quickly, before I let you get out of here, I want to switch gears to the NBA. Philadelphia 76ers do not look now. They won 7 straight, 23-16, 2 back of Brooklyn, courtesy of the road win over the Rockets, 111-91. I think Embiid, once again, he's showing you just how dominant of a player he can be. I feel like, we keep banging this drum, right, beating this drum, but now there's all these reports that Morey might want to package another player or two to go along with Simmons. I mean, where are we at right now with this Sixers squad? Because I got to give them a ton of credit for kind of playing through these distractions.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you got to give them credit for playing through because this has been a lingering situation. It doesn't seem like it's going to come to an end. Like you said, we heard, we heard the report about maybe the Sixers that had to package Tobias Harris to go with Ben Simmons. But again, as Kyle Kuzma said earlier, who's taking on $80 million to trade away? That's just amazing to even think about, to move that much money to move one player who hasn't showed up. So you got to give them credit for playing well. Like you said, Embiid's playing like an MVP. Steph Curry's really stepped up big time because Tyrese Maxey's been out too. He stepped up big time, knocking down shots, being a facilitator at point guard, and you hope that situation comes to an end. But as things stand, we're only, a month or so out from the trade deadline. Yep. It doesn't look like there's no traction unless something happens with the Hawks in their situation. See how they kind of play the rest of this month because they haven't, after getting to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, they haven't looked like the same team this year.
You got a couple NBA props that you're keeping an eye out for tonight. Give me a couple that you like.
Yeah, so a couple props that I like tonight. I have Lonzo Ball over 5.5 assists at plus 110. They're going against the Pistons. Pistons give up at least 25 assists per game. That's ranked 25th in the NBA. So I like that spot there, especially a Pistons team that's coming off a good win on the second night of a back-to-back. I think the Bulls catch them here. DeAndre Ayton over 15.5 points. I like this just because the Raptors front court, they're good, but they're not great. And I think Ayton will, build off his performance after coming off the COVID, coming off the health and safety protocol a couple nights ago against the Heat. I think he bounces back here. And then one more prop I'm looking at. This is going to be a tough one, but I'm looking at Andrew Wiggins over 1.5 3-pointers. He's hit this number in 7 out of his last 10 games. Right. I mean, the Grizzlies have been playing great defense as of late, but they're still giving up in total this season. They're still allowing teams to shoot 36% from 3 this season. So those are my 3 props that I'm looking at for tonight's sleep.
I like the Ball over 5.5, right? What's that, 110, yeah. 115 at DraftKings?
Yeah, I think, it's at 110 on, it's actually 110, plus 110 on DraftKings, and I think it's at even plus money on FanDuel too. So that's one that you can still grab, I believe, at that price right now.
All right, but the question is, will you be backing your play with these?
You already know, Rich. You know how we get down. I'm backing the play, and win or lose, we're going to keep on shooting.
You have to shoot your shot, exactly.
There you go,
brother. Great stuff as always. Don't forget at Jovan10, Jovan Alford, staff writer, DK Live. He's going to join us Thursday in the 5 o'clock hour as well. Good luck with the bets tonight, pal. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks again, Rich.
All right, you got it. Be well. There you have it, our guy, Jovan Alford. Really good stuff. He's a good follow on Twitter. Very good when it comes to some of these NBA props. He's been on a nice little run, so definitely give him a follow. 518, Lloyd Vance on the other side.